This is Keyi, our grandfather's land. This is a land of change. The mountains raise up the glaciers grind down the mountain. Rock turns to soil, ice back into water. This ancient cycle feeds the land, the plants, the animals, and it has fed us for generations.
I'm Diyet van Lieshout. I'm from the Kluane clan. This is my community. I was born and raised here. This is the land the world knows as Kluane. Our people are the Kluane Kudan. This is our story, our challenges and our triumphs. How we are adapting to the changing climate, and how we're using our traditions to find our way towards the future.
This land is who we are as a people. This land is reflected in our language. It's celebrated in our culture. The land defines us and has helped us to survive for thousands of years. We fished these glacier-fed waters and hunted and traveled the highest peaks in Canada. We followed nature's cycle, harvesting the plants and animals that each season brought. We are the sheep hunters.
This land has always given to us, but the changes of the 20th century brought challenges and struggles we could have never imagined.
It started when they found gold on our lands. Then World War II brought the Army. They came as defenders, building the Alaska Highway. But they took from the land like conquerors. And in just a few years, the caribou were nearly wiped out. Moose and sheep populations decimated.
No person may hunt, trap, take, kill, shoot at, wound, injure, or molest any game, or take, destroy, or molest the eggs or nests of birds in any game sanctuary at any time of the year.
In 1943, the Canadian government established the Kluane Game Sanctuary. They said it had to be done to protect the wildlife and the land. In a few years, the boundary was set to the Alaska Highway, at our doorstep. The people were divided by a highway that became a barrier to their lands. For nearly 50 years, two generations were separated from our traditional way of life. Luke Johnson is a trapper. He says the effect of the ban meant the loss of traditional knowledge.
Trapping in the park wasn't permitted, just the same as hunting and gathering, so there wasn't much trapping once the park was established. Parking sanctuary, like on the wrong side of the road, so to speak. For my generation has been, we were never blocked out of the park, but the generation before us was, so there's not much knowledge, traditional knowledge in that area, so a lot of it's been, my generation going in there and exploring and trying to find kind of the best areas for hunting and for gathering.
But it was more than hunting, fishing, and trapping that was forbidden, says Dave Joe.
And then in 1927 to about 1951, it was against the law for Indian people in Canada, including Kluane First Nation, not to be able to hire a legal counsel to advance a land claim, to advance any interest with respect to a land claim. And so what you've got is a systemic process of denial of rights of the people.
Our way of life made us criminals in the eyes of the law. Our elders remember those times.
They just scare people in any way. But sometimes they really have to. They could sneak one moose out of there. Then we don't feel good too about doing that. We feel that we're stealing. We're stealing from government.
A missionary priest, Father Morissette, wrote to the government officials on behalf of the community.
As a result of the regulations forced on them, the Indians had very little meat last winter. They do not have any more hides from which to make moccasins and beadwork, which is the main source of income to widows supporting families. At present, they have no work as trapping muskrat and beaver on their grounds is not allowed. What are these Indians expected to live on? Father E. Morissette, 1949.
Cutting us off from our homelands took away our ability to provide for our families, and in turn robbed us of our cultural identity, our food security, and our language.
We ate lots of gophers, lots of rabbit, and lots of fish. That was we had to. That was the only thing that we can get. We walked wherever we can go.
Our people lived through many difficult years. Our leaders were worried about the future, so they took a stand. They fought for our rights and joined with other Yukon First Nations to ensure a better future for the generations ahead. Our land claim and a park co-management agreement restored our hunting rights and gave us a voice as a park steward. We ensured the land was ours to use again, as we had since the dawn of time. But just as we won a major victory, a new threat arrived.
The land is always evolving, but the rapidly changing climate is disrupting the ancient cycles. And we're now faced with irreversible damages.
The world's largest non-polar ice field is disappearing. These once majestic glaciers are retreating at an unprecedented rate. Important spawning creeks and rivers for Kluane Lake are drying up and shifting. Invasive plants are colonizing new areas, changing food sources for our animals and for us.
This is Aichu, or Slim's River, and it's where it meets Kluane Lake. Not so long ago, there was a lot of water flowing from this river. Now it's mostly silt from the retreating glaciers.
The water is warming and the fish are changing.
Lingcod. We used to catch a lot more lingcod than we do now. Pike are still plentiful, trout. Never used to catch grayling in the lake, and we've been catching them in the lake now. Whitefish, but that was by net, so yeah.
There are also concerns about what might be in the fish we're catching. In the summer of 2015, Kluane First Nation launched a project to study the fish.
So that's a good tip off. So it doesn't look like it's a female. And then you see how this is like milky white?
Yeah.
So this is a male.
We brought samples caught in Kluane Lake to laboratories in Ontario. The study will show if the fish are healthy and if we can rely on this food source in the future. Researchers analyzed for traces of mercury, persistent organic pollutants, and to test their nutritional value.
The levels of mercury in the fish are varying from about 0.02 parts per million wet weight, so that's if you're eating a wet fish, to 0.4. And actually the commercial guideline, if you want to sell and fish in Canada, the fish has to be below 0.5 parts per million. So all of the fish are below the commercial sale guideline, which is great.
While that's good news, there's still other testing to be done to determine just how the changing climate is affecting one of our major food sources.
And then we heat up that little tube, and then that tells us how much mercury is in it.
Climate change is affecting the land as well. The majority of our community rests on permafrost. But that frozen ground is melting, and when it does, it can shift foundations and damage roads. So infrastructure has to be constructed with that in mind. In 2015, our First Nation opened up its first buildings designed to withstand the shifting permafrost. In the future, such projects will be more common. But right now, We're learning just what's needed and what's possible to ensure our housing, offices, schools, and roads aren't damaged by the changing land. It's a massive challenge for any government.
So our responsibility is ensuring that we do everything we can to have a reduction in greenhouse gases, do environmental practices that are safe and sustainable, have renewable energy uses in our community, and do it in a way that is respectful of our situation here on Earth and ensures that there will be an Earth for us in the future.
But we can't survive on our own. We have to do it together, as a community. One way to build new community has been through our oldest activity, hunting. Hunting changed for our people in the 20th century. Guns and gasoline turned living off the land from a community endeavor to an individual one.
In this day and age, I think everybody's got a deep freeze, and I heard this from an elder on Carcross. I went to their spring gathering, and he said everybody's got a deep freeze now, so all the meat goes into a deep freeze. It's not like the olden days where they'd get a moose and then everybody would have a piece of it, right?
We all lose when we depend less on one another. Shopping is no substitute for sharing. But a few years ago, that began to change. And it started with a young woman's first hunt. Monica Johnson's first Dall sheep was shared by the community at a feast. Sharing the results of your harvest is deeply ingrained in our culture. Everything should be shared. Nothing should be wasted. Food security is about depending on one another, but also about independence as a community. We are working toward taking back control of our food sources. We're planning a community greenhouse to grow vegetables to share. We are experimenting with raising livestock. We make our own sausage from the animals we hunt, and we pass on cooking skills to the younger generation.
We're getting ready for the moose stew cooking competition tonight. Our community remembers how to share and to care for each other, and it's important that we pass these traditions down to our children. Oh, watch your fingers.
Our elders tell us it's important to remember the ancient traditions and culture.
If we don't teach the younger generation about stuff, about our culture, our language, there is no way that they're going to survive without it. If we don't teach the younger generation about our belief system, about our potlatch way and our ceremonies, it's all going to die out and they won't be able to live off the land.
One way our First Nation is remembering is by making sure we spend time out on the land with our children in harvest camps. Children can't learn culture out of a book. It has to be experienced. Skinning a gopher, making a knife or a basket, or playing a hand game. The lesson is in the doing. Culture is in the memories made.
The great escape was fame and fortune. Didn't know home's where the grass is green.
One of the things that we really wanted to do was build connections for families back to the land, build connections between families again. So getting back to our traditional pursuits of hunting and gathering together, because a community needs to work together in order to heal, to build families, to build healthy children.
When I was on council, getting the youth to come to meetings was a struggle, and I honestly had to seek out every single one of them individually. But that seemed to work.
Your kids belong to everybody, not just you. And that's how they learn to share.
It's the song I've always known. All these roads lead to your
What they call traditional knowledge, and knowing your land is so important in order to sustain yourself if this is all you got.
This is a hard land. It always has been. There are no guarantees for the future, no promises. The future may be a difficult path, but we know that if we care for each other and this land, the land will care for us.
The beat of the drum, it's part of me. And like the beat of the drum is our mother's heart.